You know, one of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships, especially early on, is thinking that if they just do more, if they just say the right thing, send the right texts, show up more often, prove how loyal they are, then that person will suddenly realize their value. But here's the truth that most people learn the hard way. Your value isn't something you prove by persuading someone. If a person doesn't already see what's special about you, trying harder won't change that. In fact, it often does the opposite. The more you push, the more they pull away. Let's get brutally honest for a second. Begging, whether emotionally or through your actions, is a betrayal of your own worth. You're essentially telling someone, I know you're not sure about me, but if I keep showing up, if I keep giving more, maybe you'll change your mind. That dynamic doesn't create love. It creates power imbalance. And when you chase someone who isn't giving you the same energy back, you're no longer in a mutual exchange. You become a performer auditioning for a role that may not even exist. There's a big difference between showing genuine interest and trying to convince someone to be with you. Interest feels light, confident, calm. Convincing feels tense, needy, anxious. And let me tell you, attraction doesn't grow from anxiety. It grows in peace, in certainty. And that certainty doesn't come from the other person. It comes from you, from knowing that your time, your love, your attention, these are valuable things. These are gifts. They're not things you throw at someone in the hope that they finally see your worth. They're things you give when they're earned. And when you don't see that being reciprocated, you don't fight harder, you step back. Here's the thing, people are smart. They know when they've got someone wrapped around their finger. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it. And once they feel that they can have you, no matter what effort they put in, they stop trying. It's just human nature. The second someone realizes you're always going to be there, no matter how they treat you, no matter how little they show up, they lose the sense of urgency. They lose respect. And slowly, that initial spark, it fades. Not because there wasn't potential, but because one person started giving everything while the other gave almost nothing. You don't need to audition for love. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to earn someone who isn't willing to earn you back. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone fall in love because they were begged into it? Has anyone ever said, well, I wasn't really into them, but then they started texting me every day, showing up uninvited, proving how available they were, so now I'm madly in love? Of course not. That's not how it works. Real connection doesn't need to be forced. It flows, it builds, it meets you halfway. Now, this doesn't mean you don't show interest. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about playing smart to get. There's a difference. Playing smart means you're open, but not desperate. You express interest, but you don't lower your standards. You don't keep knocking on a door that's barely cracked open, hoping someone lets you in. You knock once, and if they don't open it, you walk away. Because you know you'll find another door that swings wide open without hesitation. People respect what respects itself. Read that again. When you respect yourself enough to walk away from half-love, from confusion, from inconsistency, that's when people start paying attention. That's when someone realizes, oh, they're not going to stick around just because I give them crumbs. That moment of silence, of distance, it tells them more than any text or speech ever could. It says, I value myself too much to beg for you. And if they walk away for good, that's your blessing. You dodged a future full of uncertainty, of constantly proving your place, of emotional fatigue. If someone disappears when you stop chasing, they were never really there to begin with. They were only hanging around because they liked being pursued. They liked the ego boost. Not you, not the connection, just the chase. That's why begging doesn't work. It doesn't make someone love you. It doesn't deepen attraction. It doesn't build the kind of relationship you deserve. It simply tells them you're available for less than you want and that you'll keep showing up even when they don't. So what do you do instead? You become magnetic. And how do you do that? You focus on your life. You invest in yourself. You create joy and purpose outside of any relationship. You let people earn your energy. Because when someone sees that your world is full with or without them, they realize they need to bring something of value to the table. Not just charm, not just attention when it's convenient, but real, consistent, intentional effort. And when they don't, you don't chase. You don't beg. You don't text again and again trying to resurrect the dead conversation. You move forward with grace, with strength, with dignity. Because here's what it all comes down to. The love you want isn't found in chasing, it's found in choosing. Choosing someone who chooses you back. Choosing peace over chaos. Choosing clarity over confusion. Choosing to protect your heart by never giving it to someone who doesn't know how to hold it. No begging, no chasing, no proving. Just presence, just power, just peace. You see, attraction isn't about pursuit. It's about presence. We're taught this ridiculous idea that if we want someone, we have to go after them, chase them, prove ourselves to them, show them why they should choose us. But let me tell you something that will change the way you look at attraction forever. Real attraction doesn't come from running towards someone. It comes from standing still, grounded in your own worth, and letting them come closer. When you're chasing someone, what you're really doing is stepping out of yourself. You're abandoning your life, your energy, your values, your rhythm, to step into someone else's world in the hopes they'll let you stay. And when you do that, you're not building a connection. You're building a dynamic where your value becomes conditional on their approval. You want someone to be drawn to you? Then stop running. Stop overinvesting. Stop messaging twice when they haven't replied to one. Stop building castles in the sky with someone who hasn't even laid a single brick with you. You don't need to chase love when you're living a life that radiates it. You don't need to convince someone to want you when you're already deeply connected to your own sense of worth. When you're truly present, not chasing, not acting out of lack, you become magnetic. Because people can feel when you're not desperate for attention. They can feel when you're not clinging to their validation. You're not just physically present, you're emotionally grounded. You're not trying to be interesting, you are interesting because you're focused on living, not performing. There's something undeniably powerful about the person who doesn't chase, who doesn't flinch when someone pulls away, who doesn't rush to text back just to prove they're still there. That person exudes confidence, not arrogance, confidence. The kind that says, I know what I bring to the table, and if you don't see it, that's okay. I won't beg you to sit down. Presence is about showing up fully in your own life, not waiting for someone else to complete it. You have to understand that your time is valuable. Your energy is sacred. And if someone can't see that, if they're unsure or inconsistent or playing games, you don't have to make a speech. You don't have to punish them. You just return to your lane, quietly, powerfully, with grace. Because chasing isn't just exhausting, it's unattractive. Not because it makes you too much, but because it communicates that you believe you're not enough on your own. That you think the prize lies with them, but it doesn't. The prize is you, your presence, your stability, your joy, your peace. And not everyone deserves access to that. When someone senses that you're okay with or without them, not in a cold, detached way, but in a calm, secure, self-possessed way, it shifts the dynamic entirely. It invites them to lean in, to meet you, to actually invest. But even more importantly, it protects you from wasting your heart on someone who isn't ready, isn't serious, or just isn't for you. So when I say no chasing, I'm not saying don't show interest. I'm saying don't abandon yourself to do it. Don't shrink. Don't become the version of you that only exists to please, to impress, or to gain attention. If you're initiating every time, if you're constantly trying to get a response, if you're making excuses for their inconsistency, ask yourself this: what would happen if I stopped? Would the connection deepen or would it disappear? Because either answer is clarity. Either answer brings you peace. But you'll only find out by stopping the chase, by stepping back into your presence, by reclaiming your center. When you live from that place, that grounded, magnetic place, something incredible happens. The right people stay, the right people rise to meet you. And the wrong ones, they reveal themselves without you having to do anything at all. And that's the point. You never have to lose yourself to be loved. You just have to be brave enough to stop running, stand still, and let the right ones find you. If you're always texting, you're always waiting. You're constantly sitting in that emotional limbo, wondering when they'll reply, what they meant by that last message, if they're losing interest, or if you've said too much. You become a version of yourself that's glued to your phone instead of living your life. And the worst part, you start to measure your worth by the speed or enthusiasm of someone else's response. Let's be honest, we've all been there. You send a text, you wait, you try not to double text, you try to seem chill. Maybe you check their Instagram story or convince yourself they're just busy, that they'll reply soon. You craft the perfect message, trying to sound interesting, funny, casual, like you're not overthinking it, even though you are. And it's exhausting because all of your focus is on them. All of your power is in their hands. Here's the truth. When you're doing all the initiating, all the following up, all the investing, you're not building a connection. You're performing. You're auditioning for someone's attention. And that's not love. That's anxiety disguised as effort. When communication becomes one-sided, it's not communication anymore, it's a monologue. It's you constantly reaching out, trying to keep something alive that maybe they're not even invested in. You tell yourself you're just being proactive, but deep down, you're afraid that if you stop texting, the connection will die. And you know what? Maybe it will. But that's not a bad thing. That's clarity. There's this moment when you finally pause, when you take your foot off the gas and something powerful happens. You realize that the person who's meant to be there won't need constant reminders of your presence. You won't need to keep nudging them to remember you exist. Real connection has its own rhythm. It doesn't need chasing. It doesn't need performance. It doesn't require you to keep proving you're worth it. Now, I'm not saying you should play games. This isn't about going cold just to manipulate someone into missing you. This is about self-respect. This is about reclaiming your time, your energy, your peace of mind. You're not going to be the one carrying the entire conversation anymore. If they want to talk, they'll reach out. If they care, they'll show up. If they don't, your silence will say more than 1,000 texts ever could. Let me say that again. Your silence speaks. When you stop texting someone who's been lukewarm, one of two things happens. They either step up or they disappear. And either outcome is a gift because it tells you everything you need to know. You don't need closure when someone's behavior gives you clarity. I get it. It's tempting to keep reaching out, especially when the connection felt real, when there were moments that gave you hope, but you're not here to live in moments. You're here for consistency, for something that feels like peace, not chaos. And the person who's meant for you, they'll bring that calm, not confusion. Every time you hold back from sending that just checking in message, you're choosing you. You're choosing your dignity, your peace, your time. And I promise you, that choice compounds. Over time, you build a new standard for yourself, one where your energy is not given to people who don't reciprocate, one where your presence is valued, not taken for granted. You don't need to be constantly available to prove you're interested. You don't need to be the one keeping the flame alive. Real interest doesn't need reminding. It doesn't need resuscitating every few days. It just shows up consistently, clearly, confidently. And here's the shift. When you stop trying to fill the silence, you finally hear the truth. You see people for who they are, not for who they could be if only they texted back more or showed a little more interest. You stop dating potential and start seeing patterns. And that awareness, it's freedom. This isn't about punishing someone with your silence. It's about honoring yourself with your boundaries. It's about deciding that your time is too precious to waste waiting for a text that might never come. Because while you're busy chasing a response, life is passing by. Opportunities for real connection are passing by. And you're shrinking to fit into someone's maybe. The people who are meant to be in your life won't make you feel like you're hard to love. They won't leave you guessing. They won't require you to constantly initiate in order to keep the dynamic alive. When you stop texting, you make space. Space for people who actually want to be there. Space for someone who texts you first. Who checks in on you. Who makes you feel chosen, not tolerated. So the next time you feel that urge to reach out, just to get some reassurance, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, am I reaching out because I miss them or because I miss how they made me feel about myself? Because if it's the latter, then it's not about them at all. It's about healing the part of you that believes you need someone else's attention to feel worthy. You're not a placeholder. You're not an option. You're not someone who should be kept on standby. You are the main event, and it's time to start acting like it. You don't need to beg for love. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to text for it. You just need to know that the right people will never require you to question your value. They will meet you with the same energy you give. They will call, they will care, they will be consistent, and they won't make you wait. When you stop texting, when you stop chasing, when you stop reaching out to people who are inconsistent, something powerful happens. Silence begins to do the work for you. Most people are afraid of silence in relationships. They think that if they're not constantly following up, checking in, making sure things are okay, then the connection will fall apart. And maybe it will, but here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. If silence makes it fall apart, then it was never solid to begin with. That silence didn't ruin anything, it revealed the truth. You see, silence isn't about playing hard to get. It's not about creating distance to manipulate someone into missing you. It's about creating space that shows you what's real. Because when you stop showing up for someone who was only half in, half out, their actions will tell you everything you need to know. And you won't have to beg. You won't have to chase. You won't even have to ask. Their silence will say it louder than any words ever could. We live in a time where attention is confused for affection. Just because someone texts you every now and then, sends a heart emoji, replies late at night, or double taps your story, doesn't mean they're invested. It just means you're an option. Silence forces the truth to rise to the surface. The moment you stop feeding a one-sided dynamic, you stop giving energy to confusion. You stop being a participant in your own emotional exhaustion. That's silence. That's not absence. That's clarity. Here's the thing. We teach people how to treat us. If you keep texting someone who only replies when it's convenient for them, what you're saying is, I'm okay being on your schedule. I'll play by your rules. But when you choose silence instead, when you withdraw your energy and stop engaging with someone who's not meeting you halfway, you're sending a different message. I'm not available for half love. I'm not here to audition for a role you haven't even decided to cast. People worry, but what if I lose them by going silent? Let's be honest. If your silence makes someone disappear, they were already halfway out the door. If someone truly cares about you, your silence won't scare them off. It will draw them in. They'll notice your absence. They'll feel the space. And if they value you, they'll fill that space. But if they don't, they'll let the silence linger. And that tells you everything you need to know without having to beg for clarity. Silence also gives you space. Space to come back to yourself. Space to remember that your peace isn't found in someone else's reply. It's found in knowing that you can let go of what isn't meant for you without losing yourself in the process. Because chasing people emotionally, mentally, or even through texts chips away at your confidence over time. You start asking yourself, did I say the wrong thing? Should I have waited longer to reply? Should I try again? And suddenly you're overthinking everything and undervaluing yourself. But when you go quiet, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, that's when you take your power back. That's when you stop needing validation from someone else and start tuning back into your own intuition. And your intuition always knows. It knows when someone's energy is off. It knows when the effort is inconsistent. It knows when the words don't match the actions. Silence just allows you to hear that voice more clearly. And no, I'm not talking about ghosting people. I'm not talking about giving someone the silent treatment out of pettiness or trying to teach them a lesson. I'm talking about stepping back with grace when you've already tried to show up, when you've already made an effort, when you've already communicated and it still isn't being matched. That's when silence becomes the most honest response you can give. It's not cold, it's not manipulative, it's mature. It's saying, I'm not going to force my presence where it isn't fully wanted. That's strength, that's self-worth, and the beautiful thing is, when you hold that space with calm, quiet confidence, the right people notice. The ones who care, who are serious, who are emotionally available, they step forward. They don't leave you wondering. They don't need games to be interested. They make it known. And you begin to realize the people who respond to your silence with their own silence, they weren't ever your people. They were just characters passing through, not meant to stay. And instead of being hurt by that, you start feeling grateful because silence helped you see it sooner rather than later. In the end, silence is the filter that removes the noise, the confusion, the what-ifs. It separates those who are curious from those who are committed. And when you're serious about your peace, about your standards, about your future, that silence becomes your strongest boundary. If they don't notice your absence, they were never paying attention to your presence. No games doesn't mean no emotion, doesn't mean being detached or unavailable. It means having high standards. It means being someone who values their time, their energy, and their peace of mind enough not to entertain behaviors that leave them guessing. It's easy to confuse no games with being hard or guarded, but really, it's about being grounded. It's about knowing who you are and what you're looking for and refusing to compromise that just to keep someone around. A lot of people think they need to play it cool to stay attractive. Like, if I don't text back right away, maybe they'll want me more. Or if I pretend I'm not really into them, maybe that'll keep them chasing. But that's not power, that's fear. That's manipulation disguised as strategy. And what it really leads to is two people wearing masks, neither one being real, both unsure of where they stand, both too afraid to just say what they feel. That's exhausting. You don't need to play games to be respected. In fact, the moment you stop playing them, you start attracting people who are done with games too. The right kind of person finds clarity attractive. They don't want to have to decode your feelings or wonder where they stand with you. They want someone who is upfront, someone who communicates directly, someone who isn't afraid of intimacy. That's rare. That's magnetic. See, when you refuse to play games, what you're really doing is choosing self-respect over approval. You're not trying to create attraction through confusion. You're creating connection through clarity. You're not leading with tactics. You're leading with truth. And in doing that, you set a different kind of standard. You're saying, if you want to be in my life, be in it fully. Don't half show up. Don't breadcrumb. Don't keep me as an option. Be real or be gone. It's powerful because it's rare. Most people are scared to do that. They think if they're too honest, they'll scare someone away. But here's the truth. If honesty scares someone off, that person was never really there for you anyway. If directness is too much for them, if consistency feels boring, if commitment makes them uncomfortable, then they were never ready for something real. And you showing up as your full, honest self just saved you time. So many people end up in these pseudo relationships where it feels like something, but it's not really anything. It's not defined. It's not progressing. It's filled with mixed signals, and every moment of connection is followed by moments of doubt. That's what games create: confusion, insecurity, and eventually pain. And when you remove yourself from that dynamic, when you say, no, I'm not going to be part of this, you might feel like you're losing something, but what you're actually doing is making room for something better, something solid, something kind. Now, I'm not saying there's no excitement in the beginning stages of dating. Of course, there's a natural dance when two people are getting to know each other. There's mystery, there's curiosity, there's chemistry. But that's different from playing games. That's about letting things unfold naturally, not manipulating someone's perception to keep them hooked. The difference is intention. When your intention is to connect, not control, Your actions come from a place of strength. You're not wondering, what should I say to keep them interested? You're asking, what do I truly want to say right now? And that shift changes everything. It changes how you show up in conversation. It changes how you respond to mixed signals. It changes how quickly you walk away from what doesn't feel right. Because when you're not playing games, you don't waste time. You're not trying to win someone over. You're observing. You're listening. You're saying, let me see who this person really is and whether their actions match their words. You're not creating a fantasy based on potential. You're looking at reality, and that takes courage. It takes strength to say, I'd rather be alone than confused. I'd rather be clear than constantly trying to decode someone's behavior. But that's where your power is. That's how you shift the dynamic from one where you're chasing validation to one where you're choosing alignment. Because at the end of the day, no games isn't about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally mature. It's saying, I'm not going to try to impress you with who I think you want me to be. I'm going to show you who I am. And if that's not enough for you, that's okay. It just means you're not my person. That's not arrogance. That's self-awareness. That's confidence built from within, not borrowed from other people's approval. And when you carry yourself like that, you stop attracting people who are looking for something casual to pass the time. You stop getting caught in the same patterns of hot and cold, almost relationships that go nowhere. You start calling in people who recognize what you bring, people who are done with the games, people who are looking for the real thing. And you know what? You deserve that. Not because you're perfect, but because you're honest, because you're consistent, because you're willing to show up fully. So don't lower your standard just because the game is common. Don't mute your clarity just to fit into someone else's confusion. Let the world know that if they want to be in your life, they better come correct, because your peace is too valuable to trade for temporary attention. And your heart, it's too rare to give away to someone who's still playing. If they want access to you, let them earn it. Not with charm, not with promises, but with consistency. You know, there's this idea people cling to that if someone really special comes along, we'll need to work to keep them. We'll need to prove something, be a little more this, a little less that. Maybe if we chase a little, show them how much we care, they'll finally see it. But let me tell you something that will shift your entire mindset. The right person doesn't need to be chased. They just don't. When someone is emotionally available and ready for a real connection, you won't need to contort yourself into someone you're not to win their attention. You won't need to perform, text constantly just to stay on their radar or second guess everything you said, because they're already there, present, engaged, showing up. See, the person who's right for you won't be confused about your value. You won't have to send 3 follow-up messages to get a response or subtly hint that you'd like to see them this weekend. They'll want to see you. They'll make time, not excuses. They won't breadcrumb you with just enough affection to keep you hanging around. They'll offer consistency, clarity, and effort, not as a favor, not as a performance, but as a natural byproduct of actually wanting to be in your life. And here's the thing, when you stop chasing people, you create space. And in that space, the right people have room to come in. The wrong ones, they disappear. And good, let them. You're not here to convince someone to choose you. You're here to build something with someone who already wants to. Now, I get it. Chasing can feel thrilling. It creates drama, uncertainty, tension, and for a moment, it might even feel like love. But it's not. It's a trauma bond disguised as chemistry. When you're constantly the one initiating, constantly overthinking what to say next, constantly hoping for crumbs, you're not in love. You're in survival mode. You're trying to earn love instead of experiencing it freely. Love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't require you to shrink, to wait by your phone, to analyze one-word texts or gaps in communication. When someone is emotionally healthy and genuinely interested, they show up in a way that calms your nervous system, not triggers it. That kind of presence doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like safety. It feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath in every other almost relationship. And when that person comes into your life, you'll realize how exhausting it was to settle for anything less. You'll wonder why you ever thought love had to be won instead of simply received. You'll look back on those days of chasing and feel this wave of relief that you don't have to do that anymore because someone is finally meeting you halfway. No guessing, no games, no proving, just peace. And effort, mutual, consistent effort. But here's the catch. To find that kind of connection, you have to believe you're worthy of it. And that means stopping the chase. Not because you're bitter, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you genuinely understand this truth. You don't chase what you believe you deserve. You only chase what you think is running from you. You only chase when you think the thing you want is above you instead of aligned with you. When you really know your worth, you stop looking up at people and start looking across at them. You see yourself as equal, deserving, valuable. And you stop entertaining anyone who makes you feel like loving you is a task, an obligation, or something they're unsure about. This isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's emotional maturity. It's what happens when you finally say to yourself, I'm done. I'm done wasting time with people who only want me when it's convenient. I'm done playing roles in other people's fantasies while neglecting my own needs. I'm done proving. I'm done pleasing. I'm done chasing. And in that space, in that silence, you begin attracting from a place of confidence, not fear. You start noticing who's consistent, who follows through, who makes you feel safe, not anxious. And that's where love lives. Not in the chase, not in the texts you had to beg for, not in the maybe next time plans. Love lives in action, in attention, in showing up. And the right person, they'll do that without you having to ask twice. So stop. Stop chasing. Stop overextending. Stop texting when you know they're just stringing you along. Stop negotiating your worth in conversations that leave you empty. You're not a beggar at the table of love. You are the table. When someone is truly into you, you'll know, not because they tell you in a moment of weakness, but because they show you consistently. They'll protect your heart, not play with it. They'll make you feel chosen, not tolerated. And most of all, they won't need to be convinced. The right person doesn't need to be chased.